Okay. Thank you for joining us in the next chapter of the Mass Effect saga. We are excited to be on this journey with you as we explore the Andromeda galaxy between our offices in Montreal, Edmonton, and Austin. 3 offices. And the hundreds of team members who have worked on this game. We have spent years creating a fresh start to the Mass Effect universe. We hope you love the game as much as we do and enjoy discovering this amazing new galaxy. We thank you for your support and look forward to our new adventures together in Andromeda. Signed, the Mass Effect team. Worked on this game. Spent years. Hey guys, David here, how's it going? I'm sorry for the very delayed bringing of this review, but there was an awful lot to do and an awful lot to kind of dig into because I'm about to review what could be considered the most talked about game of the year. Not necessarily in the most positive way, but come on, like more people have talked about this game than Legend of Zelda, than Horizon Zero Dawn, than Neo, than any other game that has been released in this first third or so of the year thus far. And it's of course for the beauty, the one and only, Mass Effect Andromeda. Yeah, by now, whether or not you played it, you know that this game was released, in fact, way too early. And because of that, it just doesn't hold up to those original Mass Effect games. But that's not to say that it's a bad game, because people look at the problems with this game, whether it be the social implications of the controversy behind the making of the game and the LGBT stuff in it, or the technical issues like the facial animations or the bad lines of dialogue. But that really overshadows. It's really true when they say that negative stuff can overshadow certain positive things about a property, whether it be a game or a movie or whatever. And I really want to showcase what Mass Effect Andromeda does right, because it deserves a fair shot. However, I will not deny it's not as good as those original Mass Effect games. At least 1 and 2, because full disclaimer here, I have not played 3. So when this game was coming out, I didn't have enough time to jump into 3 because I knew I was going to spend my time with it. I looked at it as like the Fear the Walking Dead equivalent of the Mass Effect universe, where you got Mass Effect, which is like The Walking Dead, and this is like Fear the Walking Dead. You got that little appetizer before you dive back into what's actually important. And that is true, because if you've never played the Mass Effect games, you can jump right in and not miss a single thing from that original trilogy. Initially, it looked like maybe they were going to reference it here and there, but I barely caught any kind of reference, except for at the beginning they asked you if the Shepard from the original trilogy was a guy or a girl, and then after that maybe a couple of keywords here and there like the genophage or whatever, but besides that it's its own original story. And the story is that you are the character who's known as Ryder, whether it be first name created by yourself and then Ryder, or Scott Ryder, the male template, or the female template, Sarah Ryder. You are given the title of Pathfinder, and as the human Pathfinder, you need to go out into the Andromeda cluster and find different planets to colonize, so that you can then try to give the human species some kind of future to look forward to. And in the midst of all that, you're also trying to communicate with different aliens and make sure things go over smoothly. Of course, not every alien species is going to agree with you, and hence bring forward the Ket, which are essentially our bad guys, and they are going to make sure that you do not conquer these worlds before they do. The story doesn't get any deeper from that premise, but what I will give the original Mass Effect trilogy is that that story did get deeper, not only as the first Mass Effect game progressed, but especially by the time we got to Mass Effect 2 with the Elusive Man, the Reapers, the genophage got expanded a little bit more, and of course, much like those previous games, this game does offer some side stuff and some things in the background to kind of flesh out the lore with these species, the alien species, as well as this story with the Ket and how they came about, and the different things about the characteristics about these planets, whether it be the temperature in the atmosphere or stuff like that. You could look that up. But what I will give the Mass Effect trilogy did better than Mass Effect Andromeda, and why it feels like the story is much more shallower, is because in here, you really do need to read that codex and try to dive head first into that knowledge, into that background mythology behind this universe. Whereas the Mass Effect trilogy originally, I believe, had more characters talk about their background and talk about, like, for example, if you had an alien character like the Turian, they would actually talk about their species, and that kind of brought a better emotional resonance with that, and you connected with it more. Here, you don't get that connection. It also doesn't help that these characters are not as memorable as those from the original trilogy. I mean, by the end of Mass Effect 1, you had some deep-rooted connections with some of the characters, especially when it came to some of those heavier choices to decide whether or not somebody lives or dies. Here, some decisions like that happen within the story, but initially in that one moment, yes, I was thinking about it, like, oh my god, do I do this or do I do that? And I have characters constantly telling me there's going to be consequences. Unless there's a sequel, I didn't see that consequence actually come about. It's maybe a line of dialogue here and there, like, oh, I didn't like that you did that, but like the next scene, it almost felt like they moved on from my decision and they didn't hold any major hostility towards me. So again, not as deep and as emotionally invested as that original trilogy was with that. And again, the characters don't do anything to kind of breach beyond their archetypes, because you only got 6 partners here as opposed to like the 10 or so that you got by Mass Effect 2. Here, these six characters, Cora, Liam, the Krogan Drax, or was it Drac? Drac. See, they can't even. I'm confusing my Guardians of the Galaxy space opera properties here because the names aren't even that different. They're not even that unique. So you got these characters that are archetypes, but I will admit, the voices behind these characters, including your main character Ryder, whether it be Sarah or Scott, they're likable enough. I didn't hate any of my supporting characters, and I'm glad, because you're stuck in this ship, the Tempest, for the majority of the game with these characters. You need to like them, and thankfully I did. Sure, they're not given the best lines of dialogue. Trust me, some of these lines of dialogue are cringe-worthy, where I'm like, what the fuck did you just say? But beyond that, they had likable personalities. They just didn't have very memorable ones. Should one of them have died, depending on your decisions, I'm not spoiling anything there because it all depends on your decisions whether or not somebody can die or live or develop a romance with. Even though it depends on you, you never get as emotionally invested as you did in those original games, because by the end of this here, sure, it's cool to see some action go on between your character and another, but at the end of it, it's just within that moment, and you don't get that feeling of still remembering your experience with these characters long after you put away the game. And I'm about to echo what everybody else has said at this point, that one of the main reasons why you feel that disconnect are because of those facial animations, because you need to be able to look at your character and actually connect with them. So when they're trying to be having an emotional moment with you, but then they start looking like this, it's not going to work. Especially Cora. I think out of all the characters, the side characters that I had relationships with and I was talking to amongst the Tempest, it was Cora, the one that had the weirdest looking face throughout the entire. It's like she was stricken with the bad case of Botox, like the entire time. It was just like this the entire time. And I played this almost the majority of the, like 95% of this game. I played it before they released the famous 1.05 patch, I believe it's called, which fixed some of the problems, especially that infamous "my face is tired" scene, which did get a major overhaul. But I think that's one of the only, if not the only, main facial structure that they fixed, because they still have a long way to go. I installed the patch and managed to do a couple of more loyalty missions that interacted with Cora, and she still looked kind of iffy. She didn't look as bad, but she still had some issues that I still need work. And again, these issues do cause a disconnect for you to be able to link together with these characters and make them memorable. And this is where my theory that this game was released early comes about, because the planets in this game are actually pretty looking. They're not the best, most gorgeous environments that you're ever going to explore, especially on the current gen of consoles. Trust me, they're not. But they're not that bad looking. Like, they're good to look at. There's some cool creative design choices, especially when you bring in the Remnant, and again, some of the design of the planets. They're not as colorful or as intricate as some of the planets in the original Mass Effect trilogy were, but they're still very cool to look at and to kind of explore, and to also see how the environment works, whether it be with the rain or the fog effects. They're all pretty good. But then you get your characters, and then you get your humans, and when you start to see somebody bouncing from one place of the environment to another, you just get that immersion just completely broken, because that's what games are supposed to do. They're supposed to rope you in and get you invested into this environment. So when you start to see homie teleporting from one place, it breaks that immersion, and you just can't find yourself to really be part of this world. And that's what Mass Effect has always strived to do, and they failed. But I gotta give some credit to the voice actors here, because as bad as those lines of dialogue were, they sold them. They sold them as best as they could. And man, the guy who does the voice of your male character, male Ryder, Scott Ryder, however you want to call him, he is leaps and bounds better than that male voice from the original Mass Effect trilogy. The guy that sounded very monotone like this, no matter what type of circumstances he was under, he would always sound like this. Oh my god, this guy is way better. He was able to sell, and for the longest time I actually thought it was Nolan North, until recently I looked it up on IMDb. It's not Nolan North, but whoever did it is a very good impression of Nolan North. And even the female Sarah that I've seen in some videos, she does a very good, the female writer, she does a very good job as well. And what I enjoyed a bit more here is that the lines of dialogue kind of have this attachment to them that it tells you which emotion you're trying to kind of emit as writers. So one answer could be casual, whereas the other one is very cold and professional. And I like that, because in Mass Effect 1, there were certain dialogue choices that I would choose, and then sometimes my character would say something slightly different, and I'm like, no, that's not what I intended to do, or at least not in that tone. I didn't mean for him to say it in that tone. Here, they make it clear, if you say this, you're going to come across as casual. If you say this, you're going to come across as loving, or here, you're going to come off as a bit of a jerk. And I'm thankful for this. Some other players might consider this kind of hand-holding when it comes to the RPG elements and trying to create these relationships and romances or friendships or whatever. But I really appreciated this, because that was one of my problems with the original Mass Effect trilogy. No matter how good even 2 was, it still had that problem of not letting me know which dialogue option was the proper one that I wanted. But now I'm going to switch on over to what I think people need to look at a bit more with Mass Effect Andromeda, and that's the gameplay. The gameplay is actually very, very good. It's very, very fun. There's a slight more lean towards the third-person shooter type of mechanics that you started to find a bit more in 2 and 3 rather than 1. But again, those mechanics in 1 weren't all that great, and here they're very polished. I never found them to be wonky in terms of the controls or the mechanics or any kind of collision issue or something like that. In fact, most of the technical problems were mostly the ones that you saw, whether it be the facial animations or glitches of a character being stuck, which did happen to me a couple of times. The game did get me stuck in one certain part where I needed to restart the game, but the game never crashed, as opposed to a Telltale game. A Telltale game would crash where I need to restart my entire fucking PS4. This, I can actually just jump right out and jump right into the last save, which was about 2-3 minutes ago. I'm like, okay, cool, that's fine. All I gotta do is just avoid this little spot. Again, I'm not trying to defend the publishers, because I get this shouldn't be happening with a triple game like this, and it's more evidence that it wasn't finished. But at least I'll take the lesser of two evils, and it didn't happen as frequently as I was expecting it to, especially when you combine it with the gameplay. And the gameplay here, the shooter mechanics are very good. You're able to switch weapons on the fly with the little reticle, which I thought was kind of cool. I think you can carry up to like 4 weapons as opposed to like the 2 from Mass Effect 1 and 2, which was very nice. You got your companions that are helping you out in battle. Ever so often, however, the AI would dip. Sometimes it would be very high where you're like, okay, cool, you're helping me out properly. But then other moments, they're shooting and they're barely packing a dent into the kit. And even playing the devil's advocate, the AI for the enemies weren't even that great. They would be right in front of me and they're like, oh, I guess this is the time to reload instead of shooting me. I'm like, okay, the time it takes you to reload, I'm about to shoot you down. But there were some challenging moments where we had onslaughts of enemies taking me on. And here it's where it's not just a matter of shooting. You also need to use your biotics and your different specialty items like the concussive shot and your abilities on your Omni tool, that kind of thing. And I really appreciated the combination of being able to do all these things on the fly, because there were so many badass moments where I would shoot my concussive shot, the dude would be rebounded into the air with half of his health almost down, and I can shoot him as he comes down and he's dead by the time he hits the ground. And I'm like, okay, these are the moments that are going to keep me going playing this game for hours on end, because that was genuinely fun. Sure, you got some weird facial animations, a couple of bad lines of dialogue, but between that and great gameplay, I want the great great gameplay in my video game. The only downside is that jumping from planet to planet, as much as the game encourages exploration, there were a couple of little issues. One of the issues is actually a little bit of a non-issue because they actually fixed it in the latest patch, and that is unskippable bits of your ship going from planet to planet. Now you can skip them, but prior to that, oh my god, it was a trudge to be able to jump from... The game would encourage you to go to these planets so that you can either progress in the main story or progress in your side quests. And I would often be discouraged to do so because they will tell you to go to this planet, this other cluster, and now I have to wait for my ship to go all the way over there. They stripped away the mechanic of being able to refuel and all that, which kind of saves some slight hassle, but at the same time it came at the cost of wading through these plays of seeing the ship go through warp speed and then traveling from planet to planet in real time. And I'm like, this is just exhausting. Yeah, BioWare owes me like an hour out of the 40 hours I spent in this game. And speaking of the 40 hours that I poured into this game, out of those 40, I think about 20 or so are actually part of the main story. The main story is not actually that long for an RPG, especially an RPG that takes place in space. The rest of those 20 hours left over from the 40 hours is side quests, and I'm still not done. This game is bursting at the seams with side content, from the loyalty missions to the tasks that you can do on each planet to the actual side missions that have some kind of story or character involved in it, that are the type of missions that I love. But this game just has way too many that I'm convinced they're adding these in real time. I'm pretty sure that's not the case unless they added some with the patch, but it almost seems like in real time, from week to week, the developers are constantly and intentionally adding more content to the game to keep you playing. Because I would revisit a planet after a while, and then boop, there's a little blip on the map saying, hey, you got a new side quest. There's this person right here that wants you to do something. Most of the time it ends up being a task that are some of the more mundane ones I collect, 10 or minerals or something like that. But every so often you get the one that has an actual story to it. And there's so much to do that, on the one hand, I want to say it's a compliment, but then on the other, there's just way too much that it's actually overwhelming, that I have to step away. I have to step away, and I'm like, there's legitimately too much content in this game that it's a little bit overwhelming, and you get kind of tired. And every time you visit a planet to complete a side quest, a brand new one pops up, and you kind of just start to look at it and go, this is too much. I did play the multiplayer for like 20 minutes, and I knew that I could, literally right before I filmed this video, I played the multiplayer for 20 minutes for the very first time, and I'm like, no, it's bullshit, okay? First of all, Mass Effect is not known for multiplayer, even though 2 and 3, I believe, had a component to it. I can't remember anything from it, but I do know that this game's multiplayer is shitty, because it's not multiplayer, it's co-op. It's co-op. Why are you calling it multiplayer if you can't fight against other players? You can't. You go up against AI-controlled NPCs, Ket, and you fight side by side other players online. That, by definition, is called co-op, not multiplayer. That's all you do. You fight waves of enemies, and ever so often the goal will change to you needing to hack a certain spot on the map where you just need to stand in one place and defend you hacking this terminal while you fight off more Ket, more enemies. The enemies that you fought in the main game, there's almost virtually nothing new. You're basically playing an extension of the missions from the main game, only there's no kind of twists and turns with the story or the objectives, because it's tailored to an objective that takes place in the main campaign, and you're not going up against actual players. So that feeling of unpredictability that you get from other multiplayers, it's not there. Then why bother? Mass Effect Andromeda may have had some very rough waters, and they still got a long way to go, even if they're constantly releasing patches that demonstrate that maybe they have taken their time all the way until fall even. I would have taken this game in fall. We probably would have had a better game that would have been received much better, probably would have gotten some way better reviews, and we probably could have had the start of a brand new legacy in the Mass Effect series, which it could still very well be. We might still get sequels, and I might still be intrigued in them, because as much as people give this game flack for the facial animations and the glitches, which are there, and I'm not denying them, we should also not deny the very well put together gameplay that made this game had an enormous amounts of fun moments, great cool action sequences with the gameplay and the shooting, but also some great character moments here and there where I genuinely like these characters. No matter how bad the dialogue could be, or some of the situations that they find themselves are kind of really badly written, where you're like, okay, you could have easily avoided this. It happens, but it shouldn't be completely shit upon and torn apart just because you fail to find the good in it. Mass Effect Andromeda is not a humongous pile of shit. Plain and simple. It's not, but it's definitely does not hold to at least Mass Effect 2. Again, I haven't played 3, but it's not Mass Effect 2, but it definitely has some things that it did way better than even Mass Effect 1 did. And that I say with the utmost sincerity. And I'll be giving Mass Effect Andromeda a very, very low 8 out of 10. So if you have played Mass Effect Andromeda, despite of what you've heard, from the controversy to the technical issues, you said to yourself, those facial animations are golden, I'm in for a good time, then please let me know in the comments what were your guys' experiences playing Mass Effect Andromeda. What type of characters did you come across? What were your reactions to said characters, especially some of which were controversial in and of themselves? Please let me know all of your feedback down below. Make sure you like and share this video, and of course follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at DarkSpiderDavid, and make sure to subscribe for future reviews, playthroughs, all kind of fun jazz all up on this channel. And if you guys enjoyed my review enough to purchase the game, if you have not already owned it, then please use the link in the description below. It would really help me out a lot. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time guys, take care. I have to cut this video off because my face is tired.